Welcome back to another episode with Master Asian Core. Today we are going to talk about efficiency. Now this is a question that oftentimes it comes up, especially when we talk about doing work. We have Scrum teams that commit to work at the beginning of the sprint. For example, we have 5 work. Let's draw up 5 different stories that the team has committed to. And if you have 5 developers, the question then is, well, who should do what? Oftentimes, to be efficient, each person will take one story and do the work. So when developer asks me this question, oftentimes I will ask, can you complete all the work and get the stories? Can you complete and get these stories to be completed and accepted by our product owner? That's a different question than asking them, well, can you complete the work on your own? Because oftentimes what I find is that if you ask the question, can you complete your work on your own? The answer is yes. Well, not really, because they don't think about something else. They don't think about code review. They don't think about testing. It's their own part only. Okay? So usually, let's just say the story has 2 things. It has the code piece that needs to be done, and it needs to be tested. If this person can complete both tasks, then yay, that's pretty easy, right? Each person takes something and they can get work done, then we are all good and happy. But that's not usually the case. Usually the case is that, wait a minute, there is a compliance issue here, there's an audit issue here where the person who writes the code should be the person doing the testing. Okay, so maybe we solve the problem differently. We say, okay, this person writes the code, but this person tests the code. So you go down this way, right? And then this person do this. Well, actually, nope. It's the other way around. This person actually tests the code here. If you do it this way, then we solve the problem, right? Well, not really. This works great if everybody codes at the same pace. Everything gets done at the same time. Everybody is testing at the same time. Then it's all good. But that is not usually what happens. Usually what happens is that you may have this work that has bigger amount of coding, for example, takes longer, right? This takes longer. Maybe this takes longer. And they are all not at the same pace. So when that happens, then, well, if this person takes longer, this person that's supposed to test this code now has to wait, right? Okay, so he finishes task, he's waiting for this person to finish, so now you're waiting. Well, what do you do? So you have this delay because you're waiting, and this is cost right here. What if we say, well, let's solve the problem by saying, let's put priority on the work. Let's get work done in a specific sequence. What's awesome if all work are about the same size. Usually what happens is that you may have 1 or 2 that doesn't have the same size. So for example, the highest priority may be that is that's really big size, right? So this is big. The rest is small. So when you have that, what happens? Well, you're waiting on the big ones to get done, right? The items number 2, 3, 4, and 5, or story 2, 3, and 4, which has lesser value, lesser priority, will get done first. So imagine this happening at a grocery store. You, as a customer, happen to have bought a lot of stuff. You go up to the cashier and you're waiting to pay. The cashier said, hold it, sir. There's somebody behind you that has less. Let's take care of them first. So what happens if it continues that way? What happens is continuously things that are less than what you have. You as a customer now are stuck. You can't get your stuff checked out. You may be the highest value at that point. Guess what? That doesn't get done. So this here gets stuck. So ideally, you want to get things done based on priority, making sure we get things done first, that is highest value before moving on. So the way you do that is that you swarm, right? You pause this work. You pause this to help with this. So during stand-up, what other stories, what can we do, right? What can we do to help get story number 1 from in progress to done? That's what we're trying to achieve, right? Our daily stand-up. So if you have that, and if you are doing that, then essentially you can get work done in the right way. Another way of looking at this is, imagine us driving on a two-lane road. And we all fit normally. If you want to go from point A to point B, if there is not many cars on the road, you tend to get from point A to point B pretty fast. But what happens during peak hours, or when we get a lot of cars? In other words, we're filling the road, maximizing every space available and filling it with cars. Guess what? Nothing moves, right? So the idea here is that when we look at our capability and capacity, when you have columns, right? This is our backlog. This is in progress. This is done. What we want to do is to get items to done, right? We want to get items to done. So what we want to do is have what we call a limit here. We don't want to fill it up with everything here. If you have 4 developers with 4 things, we don't want to do that. What we want is we want to reduce the limit, what we call reducing the WIP limit, right? So that will enable us to move stories to done. So reducing our WIP limit, in other words, if you have 5 developers, don't work on 5 things at the same time. If you do, it goes back into what I talked about before, where now you have to wait. Everybody working on the same thing, everything comes into it, and everything needs to be tested. So let's look at that for a limit and say I've got A, B, C, D, 4 developers, and I've got 1 QA. What essentially has happened is that you now have this thing, what we call 4 input and 1 output. If you're lucky, you get 2 output, right? The QA doesn't have enough capacity to finish all 4 things at the same time. So now you basically create yourself a backlog. So we don't want that. So what we want to do is we want to say, let's not work on 4 things. Maybe let's not work on 2 things. C helping A, D helping B. But then wait a minute. You're asking now, says, wait a minute, that's not efficient. We got 2 people doing the same work. What this does is this. It's basically, yes, this is what we call pair programming. Isn't this inefficient? Well, are you trying to be efficient or are we trying to be effective? Why do we say this is more effective? The reason why this is more effective is this. Developer A cannot, shouldn't be doing their own testing. So this is person E doing the testing, right? And developer A should not be doing their own code review. So C can doing the code review at the same time. So therefore there's no handoff. So you're not waiting from A, hand it off to C. You can both do it at the same time. So you get this code review done at the same time. Your quality goes up. Okay. Imagine then if D and B does the same thing. So here, you are doing two things. So your WIP limit is 2, right, in progress, and you get both done in an efficient manner, right? Much better than having 4 and then waiting for things not to happen. Because when you create a backlog for the QA, over time, you have too much in queue. So what happens is that now you have this all sprints doing nothing but doing testing. And what is that? Well, that's waterfall, right? So we want is that we want to increase the quality. How? Well, doing code reviews, spending time writing unit tests, and that's the thing you can do to pair up to do the work. So hopefully that helps you see my thought process as to why, everyone working on their own stuff isn't an ideal situation. Now, the other thing to share is this, is oftentimes if individuals working on their own, it's what we call a silo. And when that happens, especially if you have expertise, if you have a front-end expertise, for example, and all they do is front-end. And what happens is that if that person leaves, well, then we get into this, there's two ways of looking at this, right? So the gloomy view is the buzz factor. If this person gets hit by a buzz, then what do? You don't have anybody else to help out. You don't have anybody else that has the same knowledge. The other way of looking at it is the lottery winner, right? If this front-end developer wins the lottery and leave, you're stuck. So either way you look at it, the glass is half empty, half full. Either way, you're stuck. So what we want is that we want more than one person having that expertise or knowledge. So you want to share knowledge. And how do you do that? Well, pair programming. Next thing I get asked is, wait a minute, we don't have time to do that right now. There's too much change going on. We can do it down the road. My question back is, when are you going to have time? When is a good time? The answer is probably not all the time. There's not really a good time that is perfect. You just have to pick one and go. Just do it, right? So my whole thing is you start off with that mentality, start off with saying that we are going to swarm, start off with saying that we're going to limit the number of work in progress. Start it off. Now, as a Scrum Master, as a coach, we're there to point things out. The teams are going to do what they want to do. And I see teams going through this, and they're all going to go and do this. And they are going to go and say, hey, I'm the front-end engineer, and I'm going to work on front-end code only. Oh, wait a minute, I finished my work, I finished my story, I don't have any more front-end work to do. I'm going to go pull story in from my queue. The next story. And that's where Scrum Master says, whoa, stop, let's halt. Let's ask the team, is there something else that you could help? Maybe you can learn back-end coding. Maybe you can help out with testing and help us get story that is of high value in and get it done instead of pulling more stuff. So what happens if this person says, I'm not going to ask the team, I'm not going to ask the product owner, I'm just going to go pull the story that has UI work and pull it in. Well, cool, you can pull it in, but you can't get it done. So you still need somebody to test, so you're now waiting. So you're now actually just, instead of helping your team, you're creating more problem for your team. You're creating more work that needed to be done. So things are in progress, but not done. So the goal is to get things from in progress to done as quickly as possible and not have this queuing problem, not have this waiting issue or delay cost. So hopefully that helps you. Let me know your comments and thoughts. Is there a better way for me to explain this? I would love to hear from you. Bye.